From the story of a young sex worker to one about an aging star, another about a transgender drug lord, and another about a troubled immigrant and brilliant architect, this year's Academy Award nominees for Best Picture tell stories that are both epic and intimate. Today's guest walks us through those nominees and what to watch for on Hollywood's Night of Nights. He's Pete Hammond this week on Story in the Public Square. Hello and welcome to Story in the Public Square, where storytelling meets public affairs. I'm Jim Ludis from the Pell Center at Salve Regina University.
And I'm G. Wayne Miller, also with Salve's Pell Center.
And our guest this week is an old friend of the show. Pete Hammond is the awards columnist and chief film critic for Deadline. He joins us today from his home in California. Pete, it's so great to be with you again.
Great to see you. It's an annual tradition now.
It's a tradition, and it's truthfully one of our favorite shows to produce each year. There's a ton of great films that we want to talk about, but we want to start first with a check-in on the state of the industry and really the state of the city and the people of Los Angeles in the aftermath of these fires. How are folks doing?
Oh, you know what? They're resilient. It was really horrible, obviously, and in Pacific Palisades and Altadena and all over. Just a horrendous thing that really also impacted every aspect of the industry. So many people, some very famous, lost their homes in a moment, and many others working all across the industry as well. And that obviously has impacted the award season that we're talking about here today. The nominations were delayed. The voting period was delayed. And many award shows that happened were also postponed. They're all now back on track and taking place this weekend and then beyond, all the way up to the Oscars on March 2nd. So people are getting back, but all of these shows, if you may have seen the Grammys and others, are raising money for the fire cause here and the victims and everything of the fires, and raising quite a bit of money. So they're using these shows for good, as well as getting the town back to work, and not forgetting we've got all these people whose lives depend on these shows and making money. This is a big time of year for them.
So we're going to get into the films that characterize 2024. Before we get into them, we're going to go individually through the Best Picture nominees. But any surprises this year?
I didn't think there were a whole lot of surprises. It pretty much is the list that I would expect. I would say there was one, and we'll talk about it, which is the Brazilian film I'm Still Here, making the Best Picture list. It made international and even actress, but for it to make Best Picture was quite a surprise, and it shows the international reach of the Oscars and the Academy membership now in doing that. And I think it also showed what was going on with the fires that I was just talking about, that many people were preoccupied where the majority of voters live in Los Angeles and New York, but particularly Los Angeles, and that the international membership was further away from it and more engaged. And you'll see this reflected in nominations here with a kind of international feel. That was one surprise to me.
Interesting. So, Pete, you mentioned international, and this has been a trend for a while now. What is behind that trend? Can you break that down a little bit for us, please?
Yeah, a few years ago, the Academy decided to dramatically expand the numbers of members. There were at one time, maybe about 6,000. It's now over 10,000. And that was a result of going more global and trying to bring in filmmakers from around the world to represent really the world. The Academy believes Oscar is not just a local award, that it has significance everywhere. And they wanted the voices of, celebrated filmmakers and people who work in this everywhere around the world. So that has been reflected now in more and more international kinds of films getting significant recognition. Last year, you saw The Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall, both in the Best Picture race as well. This year, you have Emilia Perez, and you have I'm Still Here, as I mentioned, with the Brazilian film in the Best Picture race. This is a direct result of having more voters who are around the globe.
So, quick question. I'm guessing that international audiences will be paying very careful attention to the Oscars, not just the American audience.
That's always been the case. It's been a very popular show. In fact, they take it for many countries and edit it after it goes live here and send it around the world as well. Our people now, in the age of social media and everything, can watch it in real time where they are, and streaming. This year, for the first time, the Oscars are going to be streamed on Hulu day and date, as they say, at the same time as the ABC broadcast, and that's a first. It has been on Hulu before the next day, but now it's going to be on at the same time streaming, and that means much more worldwide consumption live, too.
So let's take the films, the nominees, in alphabetical order. And so we'll start with Anora. Tell us about the film and your thoughts on it.
Anora, I saw at the Cannes Film Festival way back in May, where it won the Palme d'Or, and it is a wild comedy about a sex worker who gets involved with a crazy, wild and crazy son of Russian oligarchs, and winds up in a quickie marriage, and then pursued by all of his parents, the people they hire, and everybody to try to stop this. And it is crazy. It goes all over the place. It's a comedy, but it's also got real heart, and it's a very interesting film from director Sean Baker, who has done more independent movies in his career in the past, like The Florida Project and many others, Red Rocket, like those kind of movies, offbeat. Well, this one really started at Cannes, winning the Palme d'Or. That was a huge deal. And now it's nominated in every award show. It's up for 6 Oscars, and 4 of those nominations all belong to Sean Baker. He's the writer, he's the director, he's the producer, and he's also the film editor. And he got nominations for all of those. And then it's got a couple of acting, including, I should say, not only Mikey Madison, who's wonderful. If you ever saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, she was one of the Manson girls at the end of the movie, and she was in Scream, the more recent Scream movie. That's how he found her. He went to see Scream and goes, oh my God, she's perfect, and he wound up writing the role for her. But also nominated for supporting actor is Yura Borisov, who is the first Russian actor to be nominated for an Oscar since Mikhail Baryshnikov in 1977. So it's got a heavy kind of a supporting cast of Russian actors and people around the globe, but it is really entertaining.
Well, Pete, we could spend time on all of these, but we're going to rifle through these in sort of rapid succession here. The next on the list is The Brutalist, which is a tremendous film. And let's hear what you had to say about it.
Yeah, you got 3.5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. 4 with the intermission.
4.5 when you added getting the popcorn.
Yeah, it is a return to the kind of like epic movies in length and in ambition that Hollywood used to make regularly. And here it comes from Brady Corbet, who is an actor turned filmmaker and made for, they claim, $10 million. But it's got a lot of scope, and it's about an immigrant coming to America during the World War II and after the Holocaust, and coming and an architect, a celebrated architect played by Adrian Brody, who comes to build this kind of dream place by this industrialist, played wonderfully by Guy Pearce. They're both nominated for Oscars, and the film has got 10 nominations, and it's probably the bigger surprise of the year that a movie like this could catch on and gain traction. But it has, and it's actually doing well at the box office too. People are sitting for it, and it's developed its own audience. So that's one of the surprises of this season. That started at the Venice Film Festival, by the way, where Brady Corbet won Best Director, and we'll see what happens. But it also is nominated for everything this year.
Am I right in thinking too that they filmed it in VistaVision?
Yes, and they tout that. Not that a lot of people know what the hell that means. I do, and film fans, and if you watch particularly Paramount films of the 50s, it always starts with VistaVision. You know, Vertigo. Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo is a prime example of that. And it was the answer to CinemaScope. You know, when television was threatening movies, they created these big formats, and VistaVision is these giant cameras. Think IMAX, but an earlier version and more lumbering kind of thing. This is the first movie actually shot, feature film, shot in VistaVision with VistaVision, and it's something that Brady Corbet, the director, had wanted to do to give it even more scope and more of a throwback to those kind of epic movies that used to regularly run 3.5 hours.
So a lot of films this year had music as a theme, and one of them, of course, was the Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown. Tell us about that.
That movie was the last one to be released. It was really released around Christmas Day, and it didn't play the festival circuit. And it comes from James Mangold, who's a terrific director who does all kinds of different films. Ford versus Ferrari, a recent one of his. He also did the last Indiana Jones movie. He did Walk the Line, which was about Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash, won some Oscars there. And this is a Bob Dylan origin picture, his early days, coming to New York from Minnesota, and finding his way as an artist. And of course, Timothée Chalamet is brilliant playing Dylan. He's worked on it for years, preparing for this role, and really got the essence of the young Bob Dylan. But it is kind of a traditional musical a biopic in many ways, but it really focuses on those early days. Had a wonderful cast in addition to Chalamet, you know, and many of them are nominated as well. Monica Barbaro for playing Joan Baez, and Edward Norton for playing Pete Seeger. And so it's a throwback. And those baby boomers who grew up in this era, many of them are in the Academy. This is a sleeper. This is one to look for. I don't know anybody who doesn't like this movie.
There's a nostalgic quality to it, and the music is tremendous. Conclave reminded me just how taut a psychological thriller could be.
Yeah, I agree. I saw that at Telluride Film Festival first, and I was riveted. You know, it could have turned into a pulpy kind of movie that we've seen a lot, but it is so stylishly made in every way, from the crafts to the acting to the writing by Peter Vaughan, who adapted this book, and Edward Berger, who directed it. And it is so well made. This election that takes place, you know, for the new pope, we really see the intrigue of it, and the acting is exceptional. Ralph Fiennes is the cardinal running the election, basically, but John Lithgow and Stanley Tucci. Isabella Rossellini, like Ralph Fiennes, nominated for her performance. I think she's in the movie for like 7 minutes, but you know, she is so powerful in those minutes that she wound up getting a nomination. It's interesting. Anyway, the movie is great, and I think, you know, maybe my favorite among all of this list. Just in terms of pure filmmaking, I really liked it.
So Dune Part 2 picks up literally where Dune left off. Tell us about that.
Well, continuing our Timothée Chalamet fest. He, of course, is in it. Zendaya, the wonderful cast from Dune. You know, Denis Villeneuve, who's the director, had a vision. Always liked the book, Frank Herbert's books, and never felt it got its due. The late, great David Lynch attempted a version of Dune in the 80s, and even David Lynch would tell you it was not successful. But Denis Villeneuve, when he brought Dune to the screen a few years ago, it won 6 Academy Awards. It was nominated for 10 in Best Picture. He really, you know, wanted the essence of the book and the way he saw it. And then when he made that, he said, you know, there's more. and now I'm going to get the money and I'm going to do Dune Part 2. And that is what we have now nominated this year for 6 Oscars, including, again, Best Picture. And he has now said he sees a third part. And so there will be a third part most likely coming on this as well. But it's spectacular. It's, the crafts of it, the cinematography, everything. This is a big movie, but it's got a lot to say, too.
If we had more time, I'd want to dwell a little bit on sort of the prevalence of science fiction in this category over the last few years. But we've got to move on. Emilia Perez. I had not actually heard about this film until its success at the Golden Globes. And then I watched it. And the surprises, the twists, this is a heck of a movie.
Yes, this is a heck of a movie. It also started at the Cannes Film Festival, which has had a very good year, considering it was back in May. It's got all these movies that it launched that are in the Oscar race right now. Emilia Perez being one of them, with 13 nominations, which is almost as high as you can go. It's just one short of tying the all-time record. And comes from a French director, Jacques Audiard, although it's all in Spanish and takes place in Mexico. But nevertheless, it is a truly international production. It's also the official entry in the international film race from France. But when you look at the movie, the only thing French about it really is its director and maybe the crew. But it is a fascinating story about a cartel, Mexican cartel drug dealer leader who decides to change genders. Maybe this is really hide in plain sight, but completely changes gender. And so she becomes the title character, Emilia Perez, played by Carla Sofia Gascon, who is the subject of much controversy in this year's Oscar race right now for past tweets. This is why Pete don't tweet. That are always going to catch up with you, whether in politics or anything, or in Hollywood, And so she said some outrageous things, and now is a target of the social media and everything else. And it's quite the scandal, but doesn't take away from the achievements of everyone else in this movie. Zoe Saldana's terrific in it. Everything about it, technically. Emilia Perez is one to check out.
Do you think that'll affect do you think that scandal will affect the voting?
Yeah. That's a $20,000 question right now. We don't know. It has become so widespread and it's so written about as we're speaking here every day. There's news stories, and Netflix, which has got the movie, is basically not dealing with her now at all, not paying for her. They're sort of erasing her from their campaign and trying to emphasize the others to make sure that the movie isn't hurt. This was a front runner until about a week ago, and now it's all up in the air.
Wow.
So I'm Still Here is another international film. Tell us about that one.
That one I briefly mentioned at the top, as when you were asking about any big surprises. A Brazilian film, this is from the great director Walter Salles, is hardly the kind of movie that would get a Best Picture nomination. And yet it did. And that showed, one, that the voters are actually seeing the film in bigger numbers than the normal for international entries. And this is the official entry from Brazil, too. So it's nominated not just for international film, but Best Picture. And that's a bit of an unusual situation. Not unprecedented, of course. It's happened a few times. But this year there's 2 of them, Emilia Perez being the other one. And this is a very strong, politically tinged movie. It's about basically the government, the military in the early 70s in Brazil coming and taking people out of their homes and making them political prisoners. And that's what it's about. And it's about this man's wife who is determined to find him and to uncover this. And she's played by Fernanda Torres, and she's nominated for Best Actress. An incredible performance. This movie is incredible. Walter Salles, who did Motorcycle Diaries and Central Station, which starred Fernanda Torres' mother, Fernanda Montenegro, who was nominated for Best Actress all those years ago. So it's a family affair. And Fernanda, now 95, she has a little bit role in the movie as well.
Pete, we got to talk about Nickel Boys.
Yeah.
When I left that movie theater, I felt like I had just been to a funeral.
For the movie, or just
no, the movie was incredible, but I felt gutted. It was emotionally gutting.
It's well, first of all, it's based on Colson Whitehead's Pulitzer Prize winning novel, which is inspired by these true life stories that happened at this academy in Florida, and this one tells the story of two boys who attend it and what happened there. Just horrendous things. They uncovered later 100 bodies of these young men who were buried there, and that part of it is true. The movie then uses archival footage and past movies, like Stanley Kramer's The Defiant Ones, to tell its story, and of course with these young actors that are in it. And it's shot from a POV point of view. It's very unusual. So the camera is basically a character there. And so you'll see one actor almost embracing the camera, talking to others off screen. And for some people, that was a little off-putting. I mean, it's hard to get used to, but it is designed to put yourself, the audience, in the heads of these two kids and see what they're experiencing. And it can be very effective, and that has put it in the Best Picture race, and also nominated for its screenplay adaptation from Ramel Ross. This is his very first film, narrative film as a director. He had done the Oscar-nominated documentary called Hale County This Morning, This Evening, but this is the first time he's done this kind of film, and he's been, it's turned out really magnificently.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
So The Substance had a tremendous performance by Demi Moore.
Yeah.
Let's hear about that, Pete.
I love it. I saw this at Cannes too. I called it stuff. We could have done this thing in May. And
Hey, if you're inviting us to Cannes, we're coming.
This was in Cannes, and it blew me away. It is, it won Demi Moore her very first show business award, really, at the Golden Globes this year in the comedy category, best comedy or musical performance, and it was nominated there. It is Grand Guignol horror. Yes, it's comedy too, but it's also a cautionary tale about the endless quest for youth. And it's about a woman who's aging. She's an influencer. She does all this exercise stuff. She's well known, but she feels she's being aged out by a younger woman. And so she takes it into her own hands and finds this thing called The Substance. I call it Ozempic the movie. It's sort of that, and you have to make sure you take the shot every day or things are going to happen. And that is where the horror element of this comes in. It's also kind of Frankenstein meets All About Eve. Except in this case, All About Eve, she's competing against her own younger self, who she develops and comes out of her own body to be that new person there. This has taken the Search for the Fountain of Youth to new extremes. Demi Moore, great, and finally got an Oscar nomination for this. Well deserved.
It was. I found that there were elements of it that also harkened back to the classic monster movies of decades ago.
Like Frankenstein.
Exactly.
Be careful what you create, Frankenstein's monster.
Right.
And here she's created literally her own monster.
So, Pete, we're going to round out the 10 Best Picture nominees with Wicked, another musical, and an incredible retelling of The Land of Oz.
Yeah. Well, this was, of course, a huge hit on Broadway and around the globe in stage productions of Wicked for the last 20-some years, maybe more. Still the #1 show on Broadway right now. The film has only helped the grosses of the Broadway show. People are going to see it. But this is from John M. Chu, who did In the Heights and many movies and really knows musicals. And he came up with the idea of turning it into 2 parts. So this is Wicked Part 1, although Universal, which is releasing it, sort of took the Part 1 off of it. So they just think it's Wicked. And it plays on its own. It's brilliantly done. And wonderful performances. Cynthia Erivo plays Elphaba, and, of course, her friend in it, Glinda, or Galinda. the good witch versus what we know as the bad witch, Wicked Witch, is Ariana Grande, and she's terrific. She's very funny. She's got a real talent for comedy too, and it's big. It really captures the musical. He didn't want to cut anything. He wanted to make this thing work. So this is something you'll hear about next year too, because part 2 is coming out in November.
You know, it's an incredible body of film. Are there any others that you thought should have been at least in the consideration for Best Picture?
You know, you can always say what happened to this movie or what happened to that movie, but you know, again, I wasn't surprised that they didn't get in. I loved a little movie. If you're looking for something I think should have been in there, it's called A Real Pain. And it did get nominated for a screenplay for Jesse Eisenberg, the actor who wrote it and directed it, and for supporting actor, where I think it's the front runner, for Kieran Culkin. It's these two cousins that go from America, and they go on a journey back to Poland, where their family history involved with the Holocaust and everything, and they discover that. And it's really balancing very heavyweight topics with comedy and all of this stuff that is done in this kind of buddy movie along the way. I thought it was really well made. It was from Searchlight, and I thought that should have been in the Best Picture race.
We will add that to our list. But Pete Hammond, you are always on our list. Pete Hammond from Deadline, the Academy Awards broadcast March 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern. That is all the time we have this week, but if you want to know more about the story in the public square, you can find us on social media or visit pellcenter.org, where you can always catch up on previous episodes. He's Wayne. I'm Jim, asking you to join us again next time for more Story in the Public Square.